She was bright, she was bold, and she had a smile that could light up a whole street. But on July 6, 1992, her body was found floating in the Hudson River in New York City. Police called it a suicide. Her friends called it a lie. And even today, more than 30 years later, no one knows for sure what really happened to Marsha P. Johnson. Was it an accident? Was it murder? Or was it something even darker, hidden in plain sight? Marsha P. Johnson was one of the most famous faces of the LGBTQ+ movement in America. She had fought for the rights of people who were treated unfairly for being different. She stood in front of police lines, she marched in the streets, she gave everything she had. And sometimes that even meant the little money she owned. But her life was never easy. She lived through times when being openly gay or transgender was dangerous, even deadly. And she wasn't just a fighter on the outside. She also battled struggles inside herself, including mental health problems. The thing about Marsha's story is, the more you look, the stranger it gets. Why did witnesses see her just hours before she died, smiling, talking, and full of energy? Why did police close the case so quickly? And why did so many people believe she was silenced? Marsha P. Johnson was born on August 24th, 1945, in a small city called Elizabeth, New Jersey. Her birth name was Malcolm Michaels Jr. She was the fifth of 7 children in a working-class African-American family. Her father, Malcolm Sr., worked on the General Motors assembly line, and her mother, Alberta, was a housekeeper. Money was tight, but the family stayed close. Her mother took the children to church every Sunday, and religion was an important part of their lives. Marsha later said her mother taught her to be kind to everyone, even people who weren't kind back. But kindness didn't protect Marsha from the world outside. Even as a child in the 1950s, she felt different. She liked wearing dresses and playing with girls' clothes. But in that time, in that place, it was dangerous to show it. People laughed, whispered, and sometimes even threatened her. At just 5 years old, Marsha tried on her first dress. When neighbors found out, they teased her so badly that she decided she would hide that part of herself, at least for a while. She focused on school and stayed quiet about her feelings. But deep inside, she dreamed of a place where she could be herself without fear. After graduating from Thomas A. Edison High School in 1963, Marsha had only $15 and a bag of clothes. She boarded a bus to New York City, hoping she could start fresh. She didn't know it then, but the move she made at 17 years old would put her right in the middle of one of the biggest fights for human rights in American history. When Marsha stepped off the bus in New York City in 1963, she was just 17 years old, holding a small bag and an even smaller amount of money. The city was loud, crowded, and rough, but it was also full of possibilities. Here she could be anyone she wanted, or at least she hoped so. New York in the 1960s was not an easy place for a young, black transgender woman, though Marsha didn't start openly identifying that way yet. Jobs were hard to get if you didn't fit the normal look of the time. She often struggled with homelessness, sometimes sleeping in hotels when she could afford it, or on the streets when she couldn't. Marsha began performing in drag, wearing colorful dresses, big flowers in her hair, and bright red lipstick. She chose the name Marsha P. Johnson. The P stood for Pay It No Mind, her way of telling people to ignore rude questions about her gender or identity. And then there was love. Marsha's relationships were complicated. She dated both men and women at different times, but life on the streets made romance hard. Most of her partners came from the same world she did. People who were outsiders, who had to fight every day just to survive. Some relationships were tender, some were short, and some ended painfully. But one thing was clear. Marsha gave her heart easily, and she gave it fully. Friends later said Marsha was never driven by money or fame. She cared more about kindness and connection. Even when she had almost nothing, she would give away her last dollar to someone in need. But living in the margins of society also meant danger was always close. Police harassment, street violence, and discrimination followed her everywhere. What Marsha didn't know was that she was about to walk straight into history and into a fight that would change the world forever. It was the summer of 1969, and New York City was boiling, not just from the heat, but from the anger in the streets. For LGBTQ plus people, every night could be dangerous. Police raids were common. If you were caught wearing the wrong clothes, you could be arrested. Imagine living in a world where even your outfit could send you to jail. Marsha spent a lot of time in Greenwich Village, a neighborhood where LGBTQ plus people gathered. One of their safe spots was the Stonewall Inn, a bar that welcomed drag queens, transgender women, gay men, and lesbians, people who were often banned from other places. On June 28, 1969, police raided the Stonewall Inn again, but this time the crowd refused to stay silent. People fought back, throwing bottles, shouting, and pushing police out into the street. Marsha was there. Some say she threw the first shot glass, a moment now called the shot glass heard around the world. Others say she arrived later, screaming for freedom, but one thing is certain. Once the fighting began, she was in the heart of it. The protest lasted 6 nights. Fires burned in trash cans. The streets echoed with chants for rights and equality. It was the start of a movement that would change LGBTQ plus history forever. In the years after Stonewall, Marsha became a symbol of courage. Together with her close friend Sylvia Rivera, she founded STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, in 1970. The group fought for the rights of homeless LGBTQ plus youth and provided shelter for those with nowhere else to go. Marsha wasn't rich. She wasn't a politician. She was just one person, but somehow her voice carried farther than anyone expected. And that voice was about to get her both love and enemies. By the mid-1970s, Marsha was no longer just a face in the crowd. She was a symbol. People recognized her in marches, in newspapers, and in the streets of Greenwich Village. She had fans, friends, and followers, but also critics who didn't understand or didn't want to. Marsha's activism with STAR and other groups brought real change, but it also caused friction. Some in the LGBT plus movement at the time wanted to focus on gay men's rights, not on transgender people or drag queens. Marsha and Sylvia were sometimes pushed off stage at rallies or told they were hurting the cause. Her colorful public image also drew attention from police. She was arrested many times, sometimes for protesting, other times for things like sex work, which she often did to survive when jobs were scarce. And then there were the storms inside her own mind. Marsha struggled with mental health problems for years. She would sometimes disappear for days, wandering the city, talking to herself, or staying in hospitals. Friends say she could be joyful and playful one moment, and deeply troubled the next. Even through all this, Marsha kept helping others. She was known for giving away her last dollar, handing her coat to someone cold, or taking in homeless youth. But living in poverty and facing constant danger meant her life was always on the edge. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, the AIDS crisis hit New York hard. Marsha joined ACT UP, a group fighting for health care and support for people living with HIV/AIDS. She marched, shouted, and carried signs demanding action from the government. But in the summer of 1992, all of it came to an end, and the way it ended left questions that still haunt people today. July 6, 1992, the Hudson River in New York City. A body is spotted floating in the water, not far from the Christopher Street Pier, a place Marsha often visited. When police pulled it out, they found flowers in the hair and bruises on the body. It was Marsha P. Johnson. She was just 46 years old. Police quickly ruled her death a suicide, saying she had jumped into the river. But her friends in the LQB plus community refused to believe it. They said Marsha had been happy just days before, talking about the future. Some witnesses claimed they saw her being harassed by a group of men the night before she died. Others said she had been chased toward the river. There were also rumors of connections to organized crime, and even suggestions that police didn't investigate properly because Marsha was transgender and black. The truth? We still don't know. Was she attacked? Was she pushed? Or was it something else entirely? All we have are pieces of a puzzle, and some of those pieces went missing a long time ago. In 2012, 20 years after her death, police finally reopened the case as a possible homicide, but no one has ever been charged. The mystery remains unsolved. But maybe the ending isn't the river. Maybe the ending is what came after. Today, Marsha is remembered as a pioneer, a brave soul who stood in the streets and demanded that the world see her and everyone like her as human. Her life was messy, loud, beautiful, and painful. But it mattered, and it still matters.